So this is the Adam Fayed show for Expat Wealth, and we're delighted to be joined by Nick today from Lensoe. How are you doing, Nick?
Very well, thank you, Adam. Very, very well.
Fantastic. Now, Nick, we were talking earlier, like on WhatsApp and before this interview, and you have quite a unique background, don't you? So
Yeah.
why are we sitting here in terms of, obviously we're going to talk about your business later on, but you have a pretty unique background in Malaysia. Could you tell us a bit more about like your childhood and your life up until like your adulthood?
Sure. So I was born here in KL in 1985 to a fairly affluent family. So my grandfather is the late Daim Zainuddin. So my grandmother was his first wife. My father's stepfather from a very, very young age. And, I grew up in relative high wealth, financial backgrounds, mixed in with the right people. And that all changed, I guess, when my parents divorced. But I'm getting a little bit too far ahead, I guess. So I went to international school over here. My Malay wasn't great, so my dad actually pulled me from international school and put me into local government school for a couple of years until my Malay got a lot better. Funny enough, I met my best friend at the time in local school, in local government school, and he happened to be the son of the Malaysian ambassador to Indonesia. So that was another, I suppose, I spent a lot of time with his dad, and his dad taught me a lot of stuff as well as learning from my father and my grandmother and Daim as well.
Fantastic. So you're half British, right, and half Malaysian?
Yes.
And then you had this interesting background where you are connected to a very prominent person, like a politician in Malaysia, right?
Yes.
Now, did people growing up when you were in primary school and high school, did they know that, or did you keep it like secret?
My family was incredibly low key. My father tried to keep out from the limelight and kind of shield us, although there were instances where, somebody from the street would recognize my father and then, approach me. And I was very, very young at the time, so I didn't quite understand what all the fuss was about. It wasn't until I was a little bit older, maybe 10, 11, that I kind of understood the influence Daim had.
Sure. So that would have been interesting then, like looking back on that. Do you think though, like when it came to close relationships, did people judge you, do you think? Or do you think you never really got that because like you were low key and your family were low key? But I guess in reality, when you get to high school, people talk more, don't they? Kids get less innocent, and I don't know if that became an issue.
Yeah, well, so when I was really young, the people who knew who my father and grandfather were a little bit judgy because, my mother was English, and it was a little bit of a taboo, I guess, having the grandson of such a prominent figure being half English and not all Malay. Things got better, I think, as time got on, until I moved to the UK with my mother a little bit later. I was 13 when I moved to the UK. And that came with all sorts of challenges, as I'm sure you can imagine. Moving to the UK, late 90s, and being from a country that most hadn't heard of at the time, there was a lot of ridicule and a lot of challenges to overcome.
Yeah, because that's the interesting thing, because I think, in many Asian societies, obviously, there's bullying everywhere, but by the same token, I think UK high schools, if you go to the wrong one especially, they can be rough and they can be cruel pacers for everyone who could have a weakness. It's not about race necessarily always, anyone who might have a weakness. So
Absolutely.
I guess it was maybe a little bit of an eye-opening experience, right? But it maybe made you tough as well.
Yeah, so absolutely. It was a very stark contrast to private international school here, where everybody's lovely. I think kids in Malaysia stay kids for a lot longer than they do in the UK. So everybody at the international school had, I guess they were, again, from prominent backgrounds, and there wasn't really any bullying or any violence, or swearing was a big thing. You wouldn't swear, and nobody smoked, anything like that. And when my parents divorced, I was still in Malaysia for a few years after that, but eventually moving to the UK when I was 13 was a real eye opener. As I'm sure you can imagine, lots of. Not necessarily bullying, although there was definitely some of that, but it was a massive culture shock. Everybody at 13 behaved maybe like what 18-year-olds behaved here, and there's a lot of that kind of, I'd say, tough love, even amongst friends. You know what the British
banter,
exactly,
British banter, yeah.
Exactly. And I didn't know how to take it for a couple of years, but I guess I kind of toughened up, grew into my own, and I think I realized that I had amassed, I guess, an education that most in my peer group at that time or that school didn't have. So I was able to leverage that pretty early on to kind of stand out from everybody else, which kind of gave me, some would say, an unfair advantage. I would say an advantage.
Yeah, but it's interesting though, because obviously you came from quite an affluent background in Malaysia, as you said, but then the divorce maybe changed that to a certain extent, or a large extent even, and then your financial situation changed.
Massively.
Was that difficult as a teenager, or do you think when you're that young you just take it in your stride?
I think a little bit of both. I think when you're a little bit younger, you are, I guess, you sort of water off the duck's back a lot of the time because you're preoccupied with other things. However, I think I noticed that the house was a lot smaller. My mum's car was a lot more basic. We didn't have the same kind of holidays that we used to, or any time I wanted to do something, it went from, of course, you can have that when I was really, really young, to no, unfortunately, we'll have to wait a couple of months, or go out and get a job and earn an income for yourself, which is kind of what I did.
Well, that's interesting, because obviously I guess in Malaysia it's still not that normal to do that, right? To have a part-time job if you're from a decent family and you're like 18 or 19, right? So
yeah, although to be honest, that it really excited me in the UK, being able to get a paper round at like 14, thinking, oh my God, I can actually go and do stuff in my spare time and make some money, and then I've got my own money that I can do whatever I like with. So that was a bit of an eye-opener for me, and I really appreciated the, I guess, opportunity to earn money at a young age and buy what I would like at the time.
Yeah, well, it gives you a sense of independence, I guess. It gives you a sense of, I'm actually doing something with my own money as well, right? So
absolutely. Yeah.
But okay, that's all very interesting. But let's say, for example, with that experience in mind, do you think it has had any effects on how you see like marriage life and so on? In other words, would you like your kids to have a similar experience, like go to the UK and go to school in the UK, like, and have like a mixed parental background, or does it make you more kind of cautious, if you like?
This is going to sound horrible, but absolutely not. I don't want them to go to school in the UK. No, look, I have friends that I went to school with in the UK. I still speak to them. In fact, one of the guys I met at 13 when I first moved to the UK, he was here last year, and we went around Malaysia and Thailand. So I have a great group of friends. But growing up in a place like Bletchley, you have to, it's eat or be eaten. You really got to fight for opportunities, and there's a lot of things that you had to avoid. There were a lot of, for example, drug dealers around, which you had to stay away from, and they wouldn't necessarily make it easy on you if you did. So that was something that I went through, and although I guess I grew from it, I learnt to appreciate the things that I had when I was younger and again in later life. But I do not want to put my kids through that.
That's very understandable. Okay, then. So then, from having those experiences, both the good and the bad, you then obviously had a career and then went on to entrepreneurship as well. So how did that come around? Do you think things like the paper round and all those early experiences, did that kind of spark it in your mind that you wanted to work for yourself, maybe?
Yes. So I guess if I had stayed here and if I had carried on with the lifestyle I had, I would be a completely different person. I don't think I would have been as hungry, and I think I would have probably had an air of self-entitlement. Leaving, so I went to university to study forensic psychology. So completely separate from my dad wanted me to do law and business. And you know, I think I went down the forensic psychology route partly because, you know, don't get me wrong, I was very much interested in it, but it was a little bit of a rebellious kind of decision to make at the same time. It has definitely helped in business because I'm very much data driven and I analyze, some would say too much before making a decision. However, I found that when you base business on fact, on data that you know, rather than on emotion or guessing an outcome, which so many do, it's a safe way to grow. It's a safe way to grow. So I left university, traveled the world, I guess, for a year or two. Managed to rack up 55 countries, which was fun. I have a particular fondness for Mexico.
Okay.
And after that, I traveled the world as a photographer. So I was trained in Miami, originally for cruise ships. So I did a season on the cruise ships, traveling the world, you know, doing something I loved because I was quite passionate about photography. I returned to the UK and I started to work for two studios at the same time. So I was working 6 days a week. I was based in Milton Keynes, but traveling to Birmingham and on occasion Manchester. So it was like get home at like 11, 12 o'clock, go to sleep, wake up at like 5, 6 a.m. and you know, get on the train and go. Back then the trains weren't as expensive as they are now. I think Manchester's like £500.
It's ridiculous.
It is
now.
crazy. So one of the things I guess probably from the forensic side is I learned everything about the business. You know, I just couldn't stop asking questions. How's this done? You know, how are you making these sales? Okay, what products are selling? Which of my images are selling on which products, and what can I do to increase sales? And slowly I got to know the business model. About 6 months later, both New ID and Double Take went bust because they were owned by the same people. And they actually went under, not because their turnover was low. It wasn't. It was ridiculous. Back in those days, I think my average shoot was like £750 for a half-an-hour shoot, 20-minute shoot, and we would just do them back to back all day. It was because Black Horse pulled the finance because they were selling too much, and everybody was just, you know, defaulting. So as soon as Black Horse pulled the finance, the companies went under. I then kind of went, what am I going to do? You know, I definitely don't want to go and work for another studio at, I don't know, back in those days, I was probably making £1,500 a month. So I opened my own studio. So I kind of took the plunge, I guess, went for it, and it worked really, really well. So this would have been around 2010-ish, something like that, the start of Facebook and the digital age. And so I started experimenting with social media marketing, particularly on Facebook at the time. And I don't know if you remember back in those days, but it was so easy. You could, I remember like spending £100 and getting like 40 bookings, and each of those bookings were worth like anywhere between £350 to £750. So it was like, okay, I'm spending this much, I'm making this much, this is amazing, let's go. So I opened my first studio above a very large salon in Northampton called the salon was called Richardson's. It'd been there since the 60s. It was actually opened by Vidal and Beverly Sassoon, run by John Richardson. So it was a very well-known salon, massive place. And I had the upstairs. So as well as doing all the digital marketing, it was kind of okay. Well, my clients are downstairs. You know, it was a very expensive salon, so I knew that the barrier to, I guess, entry there was pretty high. The average client would be decent, and I was right. After looking into it and testing and doing a load of test shoots, the average for those clients was something like £1,100. So I was going to do a load of B2B with the salon owner, and one day, as I was putting this proposal together, the salon owner gives me a call and says, "Nick, I need you to come." This was a Sunday. I was at my mum's who'd done a Sunday roast, and she said, "You need to come in today. We've got something very, very important to speak about." I went, "Oh, this doesn't sound good." So I went, "Okay, well, I'm just going to finish dinner. Can it wait?" And they went, "Absolutely not. You need to get here now." So great, okay. So I got there and they said, "We're moving back to New Zealand. We're closing the salon in 2 weeks, and you're gonna have to get your stuff and move." I thought, no, I'm doing so well. I had a diary packed full of bookings. So we bought the salon. Which was another very interesting experience. So 52 members of staff, I think, at the height. I'm something like 25. So it was, and I knew nothing really about the salon industry. However, services very similar to the way you would do your marketing and get clients in for the studio. So I thought, okay, you know what? Let's give this a go. If worse comes to worse, I can support this with the studio upstairs. And the salon did really, really well to begin with. So we were doing something like 40 grand a week at its height. And then they increased VAT to 17.5%. At the same time as that, council tax went up. It was a huge building as well. So I think it cost about 30 grand a month to run the building. So it was a lot of money. And it got to a point where sometimes it could make, 50 grand a week and be, oh my God, this is amazing. And then other times you'd lose 30 grand a week and go, okay. So I got out whilst the getting out was good. Well, I made some money and thought, okay, let's downsize this to a very nice high-end boutique salon. I took the best guys with me who were creative stylists. We would enter things like Weather Trend Vision. We actually placed in one once, which was a very high-profile competition in the styling world, in the hairdressing world. So we did that. Studio upstairs, salon downstairs again. That ran really, really well. Not long after, I bought a second studio off another photographer, a very well-known guy called Stuart McIntyre, who operated Photo Nottingham, which is still going today, and Photo Stoke. But I think he'd had a bit of a health scare, and he didn't want to operate Stoke and Nottingham at the same time. And bear in mind, I'm in Northamptonshire at this time, so it's quite away from Stoke. But I went, I was young, full of energy, and kind of went, I'll take it. And we bought that, and I would be travelling from Northamptonshire to Stoke and back fairly regularly. It was not uncommon for me to be doing 16, 18-hour days back then. And then that went pretty good. It's still going today, although I've sold my shares in it. I'm not involved in any studios anymore. So I was running that for maybe about a year. Then I was looking at opening 3 other studios. So I was going to go from 2 to 5. And I was a member of what's called the Click Group. So the Click Group is the UK's largest group of independently owned photography studios. Most of them are high street, and it's almost impossible to get through, to get in with these guys, because you're only allowed one studio per county or per area, and it's quite a big area because they don't want competition. And what these guys did was make bookings for you. So they would. Do you remember Activity Superstore, Virgin Experiences? If you walked into Boots.
Oh, Boots and Virgin Experiences, yeah.
Exactly. So Charlie, my ex-business partner and owner of the Click Group and the Click Connection Corporation, he had the monopoly on that in the UK. So pretty much Activity Superstore, it was Virgin Experiences, it was buygift.com, it was all of them. And so if you got these contracts, you'd never give it up because, they would fill your diary back in the day. So I gave him a call. I said, listen, I've got my 2 studios with you. I want to get 3 more. What have you got? And he goes, Nick, I haven't got anything in those areas, but why don't you come in for a chat? And I kind of, okay, me and Charlie got on really, really well. So I took the drive down to Watford, which is where he was based. And he said, how would you like to take a directorship at CCC and buy into the business? I said, okay, well, that's a big departure from the conversation we had before. And it wasn't until he plotted the studios and the map that I'd realized I would have completely encircled his studio. So he kind of thought, okay, let's not create more competition for himself, and let's get me on board and work on the same goals. So I did that. That was in 2017, I believe. And so I was the director for the Click Connection Corporation up until 2023, which is when I decided to come to Penang.
So you were in the UK for a long time then, and then came back to Malaysia for the first time since you were 13? Or?
No, so my dad is in Penang. My grandmother's in Penang as well, and I would visit them fairly often. So maybe once a year when I was younger, like 16, 17, all the way up to maybe 20. And then after I got into uni and then started building my own businesses, there were periods where I didn't come here for like 4 or 5 years because, I was so concentrated on developing my businesses.
But I mean, the first time living in Malaysia for a long time.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So that must have been a little bit tough because I guess it was good in some ways, but Malaysia must have changed a lot since your childhood, right?
Absolutely. So the sleepy areas that I used to enjoy are just not there anymore. Penang used to be quiet. I mean, I remember my grandmother's got this beautiful house. It's a bungalow, but it's got massive garden, and it used to be quiet. You could hear chickens in the morning, kind of wake you up with their cockerels, and you could go and pick fruit from the trees, and there were trees out everywhere. Not anymore. So, now you've got the sounds of tooting horns and traffic in the morning. So I guess that was something that I missed, although, progress, right? KL as well. I grew up in, first Taman Maluri, which was actually developed by my grandmother and Daim in, I believe, the 70s. And then Sri Petaling. At the time, it was very, again, quiet. It was out of the main city. Bear in mind, this is all just before the Twin Towers went up, which I believe went up in like 97. So to come back, I actually went to Sri Petaling not so long ago. Couldn't recognize it. The roads are different. All the old houses are gone. I was actually staying in an apartment maybe about 6 months ago. I looked in the map and it said, Sri Petaling. I was looking out the window thinking, where am I? This doesn't resemble anything like the place that I grew up. But it's amazing how far KL has come in the last 25, 30 years. It's absolutely mind-blowing, and continues to do so.
Absolutely. I think people who come from abroad, they focus on the Singapores and so on, but when they come here, I think they realize it's much more developed than they expect, really. Same with Bangkok now in Thailand, right?
Yeah.
I first went there in 2007, and it was presumably much more developed than it was in say 99 or 2000. But when I compare it to now, it's a whole different beast, right? So the area has developed quite well. There's only one or two countries. I went to Laos 1 or 2 years ago. Laos is still sleepy.
Yeah.
But it's probably less sleepy than it was 10 years ago. But compared to KL, it's completely sleepy.
Yeah, I mean, the regions, I think, have been growing steadily over the last 5 years. Well, 5 years, sorry, 25 years. And even when you compare it it's difficult to compare to somewhere like the UK, which obviously has a much, much larger economy. But the fact that the Malaysian economy is growing the way it is, I think presents a lot more opportunity than somewhere like the UK right now, particularly with all of the financial woes that the middle class are going through at the moment, which was my target clientele for the photography industry. So I've been seeing this downtrend for quite a while and thought, you know what? I'm going to concentrate more on the marketing side, and I had this big project in mind for quite a while, years actually, and I never had the opportunity to do it. And when I left, I kind of thought, okay, well, I'm in Malaysia now. The cost of living is unbelievable here. You know, what I was paying for rent and bills in the UK, which is something like, £3,000 a month. I never bought because I was moving around quite a lot for the business. For a fraction of that here, I live in a 3,500 square foot house, glass fronted house in a gated community with security guards and swimming pools and saunas and gyms all on site, and it's beautiful. So I thought, okay, I'll move the family over. They love it here. That'll keep them happy, and I can concentrate because I have income that just comes in from past business deals. I can concentrate on Lensoe without having the financial burden that I did in the UK, plus provide my family with a standard of living that, God knows what it would cost in London to live like I'm living here. So it was all win-win, really. And there are a lot of different visa options to get into Malaysia. Not all of them are as straightforward. And obviously there's MM2H, which is, in my opinion, a great way to get into Malaysia. But you've also now got the digital nomad visas. So as long as you're in the digital marketing or content creation, web development space, either remotely employed or on a self-employed basis, as long as you have contracts for the duration of your stay. And I think the barrier is like you need to be making $2,000 a month, something like that. It might even be a little bit less than that. You'll get in, and it's a 1-year visa that you can then renew for another year. And so that's bringing in I'm seeing a lot of quite remarkable talent, actually, from the UK and all across Europe and even America, coming and staying in places like Penang, KL, and it's great to network with these guys,
Absolutely. So tell me about Lensoe, your current business. How did it come about, and what's it trying to achieve?
So Lensoe is a solution to a problem that I have seen in the creative industries for years. Becoming a professional photographer is hard. It's a very desirable job, and there aren't that many jobs out there. So I've seen these amazingly talented guys not get booked. They can't make any money, and there isn't really a platform that really works for them. There's also lots of other issues like models and safety. So there's a lot of this is a little bit of a sensitive subject, but there are a lot of instances where models will turn up to a shoot with a photographer they've never met before, and they end up being these creepy dudes who who sexually assault and all the rest of it, and there have been some awful stories within the industry. Well, since I started, so I wanted to create a platform that allowed creatives to not only book each other and generate revenue, but to allow advanced safety features. So I can't go into all the details, but one of the safety features would be if a model needs to let somebody know that they're in trouble without letting the photographer or whoever they're with know, you can do that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's a lot more. So that's what it started as, and as we started developing it, ideas start flying around, and you test ideas out, you do your market research, and you speak to people, and it turned out that actually what the industry wanted was a lot more than just a booking platform. They wanted an all-in-one solution, an all-in-one platform where they can not only grow and make bookings, but could run their entire businesses from. So there are a couple of CRMs out there that are specific to the photography industry. They're not great. The photography industry, particularly studios, they've never really had the, I guess, tech has kind of left them behind, because photographers are creative. They're not necessarily the best, I guess, business-minded people. Although there are some remarkable businesses out there, particularly the studios are a little bit different, because studio owners, you have to know what you're doing, otherwise you'll go bust. It's a very, very hard model to do. Your overheads are very, very high in studios, and you need to maintain a certain average per shoot whilst being able to get shoots in at a point really that's less than £100 per shoot. If you can get £100, less than £100 per shoot in, and you can convert that to £600-700, then that is great. You'll make a lot of money. The guys who do it really well are spending £60-70 per shoot at your cost of acquisition, and then they're turning that into £1,500-2,500. So the platform, I guess, allows. I'm going to use photographer as an example because the platform varies. How can I? The features vary depending on the account type. So you have videographers, photographers, models, makeup artists, hairstylists, designers, publishers. There's a big long list. Editors. So we'll use photographers for an example. So you can start your photography journey on the platform on a free account, post up, learn from others. There'll be a load of educators on there. You can sign up to courses. Very much, this is nothing new as a whole, but it's new for the photography industry or the creative industries. You can then, if you want to move on to the next step, you can get mentorship. Once you're ready past that, you can activate the lower tiered paid account, and now you can take bookings. The bookings are processed on the platform, so you won't require a PDQ or anything like that. You'll just get paid from the platform itself. Once you've done that and you want to grow even more, you can start to create your own content, monetize that content on the platform, either by getting subscribers on or selling individual digital content, be it videos or ebooks or whatnot. There's a lot more to it, but I don't know how much time you've got, because every industry is different. Right? Every sector, like the use cases for models are very, very much different for photographers. Models get booked all the time. they do quite well on. There's a couple of platforms out there right now which offers the very best technology 1993 had to offer, and they've not really moved forward. And people don't, and these aren't available on apps. You have to go onto the computer or your browser to access these platforms. Nobody wants to do that anymore, particularly models. Models tend to be, let's say, 20s, right? By the time they get to 30, they're starting to slow down and look at other careers. So the guys who are really doing well now, they don't want to be going onto a browser. They're on their phones all day. So one of the reasons they haven't done these apps is because a lot of these platforms can be fairly seedy, right? There's a lot of nudes. There's a lot of even adult content. And I mean, that's not the industry. I have never shot any of that stuff. I will not shoot that. And 95% of the photographers I know wouldn't do that either. So you have 95% of, say, photographers who are forced to go onto these archaic platforms to then be presented with this quite awful imagery. And these guys aren't into that. They're creatives. So there's none of that on our platform, so it's safe for work only. I think lingerie will probably be the highest, the most 18 plus stuff we will do. So anything, no nudity, nothing adult orientated, it'll immediately be pulled. The platform is run on a how can I say this without giving too much? See, there's stuff that I want to say, but I might get in trouble for.
Is it because based on what you're saying, it's already started this company, right? But there's certain things you can't say in the public domain. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it's still in development as well, right? So we're still at the development stage. We'll be launching an MVP fairly soon, and then that will go into beta testing. And we've already contacted. We've got a great pool of extremely well-known photographers, influencers, brands, camera brands who are getting involved with the launch and will be first on platform, and we're quite grateful to have their backing. I guess my time in the photography industry and with the Click Connection Corporation, I've got to really be thankful to my ex-business partner Charlie for this. I traveled the world. I went to every trade show in the photographic space. Used to do America. I think he does America like 7 times a year. It's something like 30 to 40 trade shows a year he does, and I went with him on most of these. So I got to meet a lot of people. And connections are king, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So your end client then, are most of them models, photographers, creatives, and are they based in Malaysia or is it global?
It will eventually be global, although we're going to launch in the US first, the biggest market. It's where most of the digital transactions within the photography industry are done in the US. Massive population. There's more studios in one half of Texas than there is the entire UK. So that's our market.
Fantastic. And is there anything else you would like to say about this particular app? Is there any way people could reach out to you, for example, if it would be a good fit for their business? And what kind of businesses should see this as a value added? Is it just more the kind of creator side, or do you think there's opportunities for like sponsorship and other things?
Yeah, absolutely. So it will grow, without saying too much, it will grow into retail as well, right? So the idea with this is we would like to get 1 million users by the end of the first year and ramp that up significantly in years 2 and 3. Once we have a certain amount of users, we'll start hitting the retailers. So I'll give you an example, Canon. So Canon distribute their products through several channels. You know, there'll be a main distributor or distributors for each region, and those distributors will sell to retailers, and then the retailers to the general public. What we can do is we can give the manufacturer, well, the distributors, direct access to the consumer. So all we are hoping to get the products cheaper than you will be able to get from retailers, which gives the users on the platform the incentive to buy on the platform. It is going to be certainly cheaper than setting up distribution yourself. And because there are a lot of emerging brands in the photographic industry and the video industry, for example, Godox, who you're using right here. I started using Godox in 2012 when I think they basically made flash triggers, which is just a little bit of equipment that plugs into your flash head and then one bit on your camera, and you press the shutter and it flashes. And they were great. You know, it was like £18 for a trigger instead of spending 300 quid to Bowens or Broncolor. And so I've seen them go from this little tiny brand to this humongous powerhouse that is, I would say, probably outselling everybody else at the moment.
Fantastic. Well, thanks a lot for coming in, Nick. I really appreciate it. And I think it was a great discussion, and wishing you all the best for this venture as well.
Thank you very much, Adam.
And everyone else, subscribe, like, and share. And until next time, have a good day.